Hi there, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about data frames. Again, if you haven't seen my previous video about making data frames and series, I've got the link up the top right. So feel free to go to that link and see the very basic video on data frames and series. In today's video, I'm going to show you, as a data scientist, what I do with a data frame that I've been given. Imagine I'm approached by my manager. I've been given some set of data that I've never looked at. I want to show you what I do when I get some new set of data, which is your data frame in Pandas. What are the first steps to take to understand your data? Imagine so far you've been working on engineering problems, and today you've been given some data about some school or from a big supermarket, some data that you have never worked with. So I want to show you what are the first steps to take when you have been given some data that you have never worked with, and how to make the best use of your time without wasting much. Let's go on. Let's make a new Jupyter notebook, give it a proper name. I'm going to give it the name of Pandas Best Practices with New Data Frames. That's what I want to call it. First things first, I need to import Pandas as PD, so that's the alias name. Today, I want to bring in the Titanic data, so all the data about all the passengers on the Titanic ship. What I will do, I will bring in the URL, the link where the data lives, then I'm going to read it into Pandas. Let's do it. So read the URL, and I've got the URL link here. So if you want to follow along with me, all the code and all the data is in the link in the description below. Feel free to download it and work along with me. Okay, what I will do, I'll paste the link to the URL where the Titanic data lives and run that. And all I need to do now, read the data from the URL. I'm going to call it data. And all I need to do is call the Pandas library using the PD alias and just say read CSV from the URL. All good. The data has been saved into the variable called data. So now that I have the data, what are the first steps I need to take? Step one, look at the head of the data. Different people do it differently, but for me, step one is to look at the head of the data. What does the head of the data means? It means the first top 5 row of the data. Why am I doing it? Well, because I can see what the indexes are. So it goes from 0 to God knows what. The first column is called name. Second column is P class, which I think is the passenger class. Their age, their sex, if they survived or not, and what was their sex code. Either, if so, from what I can see is that females have the code of 1 and males have the code of 0. So what I'm doing right now is just quickly look at what is the data structure. But again, now that I know what the data structure is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns, how do I understand the size of this data frame? So let's call it step 2. Step 2, understand the size of the data frame, which is super important because it dictates, can your computer cope with that much data? Do you have enough RAM to cope with that data? Can you do specific analysis like machine learning, deep learning based on the data? So how do we understand the size of the data? So all you need to do is call the variable that you are storing the data inside, which is called data, and then ask for the shape. So if I look at the shape, well, I knew that there were 6 columns because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I know that. There were 1,313 passengers probably on this Titanic ship. Now that I know the shape of the data, I'm pretty sure my MacBook can handle 1,313 by 6 dataset. It shouldn't be really huge. The next thing I want to understand, I'm interested in knowing, is that were there any people on this ship that we didn't know their passenger class or we didn't know their age? Are there any people that when the data gets to their name, we don't know what their age was? So in Python, if we don't know a data, if a data has not been recorded for an observation, which is a row, then we might have some null values. That's N-U-L-L. Null values means that that column has not been recorded for that row. Let's check that. So I'm going to call it step 3. Look at the data info. So I think the name suggests we're going to use the info function. So all I need to do is data.info, close open brackets and close brackets. So interesting. Let's scroll down. The info for this variable which is data. It's a class from the data frame in Pandas library. Great, we know it's a data frame. The range index is from 0 to 1312, which makes it 1313 because you include 0 and you include 1312. The data columns are 6 columns. There are 6 columns in the data. The index goes from 0 all the way to 1312. We know that. The names of the columns are name, P class, age, sex, survived, sex code. How many non-null values are in the data? So non-null value means the values that are good, that are actually recorded. For example, someone's age is 29. It's non-null because it's 29. But if we don't know how old they are, that is the null. So you can see that their names are 1313, means that we know everyone's name. We know everyone's P class. We don't know everyone's age because we only know the age for 756 people. And we know their sex, we know if they're survived or not, and we know their sex code. And D type, which is essentially the data type. For example, for people's names, the type of the data is object. The P class is also an object. The age is a float number. Float numbers are essentially numbers with the capacity to put decimal points in them. I don't know if it would report someone's age like 39.5 if they survived or not. So that's an integer, and their sex code is also an integer. And at the end, you've got a mix of floats, integers, and objects. So you've got 3 objects, 1, 2, 3. You've got 2 integers, this one and this one, and you've got 1 float, which is people's ages. And you're using 61.7 kilowatts, which is great. And this is a very quick way of understanding if your computer can handle this data or not. So if this was 61 gigabytes, I would be a bit worried about my computer not really handling it. 3, we have looked at the data info, but then my manager might ask, can you quickly tell me what is the mean or what is the average age of people that were on the Titanic? I'll have to go through and find out how to calculate the average. You don't really need to do that. So step 4 is describe the data. And the name suggests use the function describe. So if you use data, describe, and that will give you a full description of the data. But you can see that I'm only getting describe for age, for either they survived or not, and for the sex code. You should quickly realize that describe only returns results for anything that is a number, which makes sense. You can't tell me, give me the average of people's names. Doesn't make any sense. You can't give me an average of first or second because they are not numbers. But you can make an average of age, or either they survived or not. So if I look at this, age, the top row is count. Means how many valid data points are there? Well, we knew the age for 756 people. We knew the survival and the sex code for 1,313 people, for all the people on Titanic. Very interesting information. The mean of the age of the people on Titanic was 30.3. Means that a lot of people that were on Titanic were actually very young. The standard deviation is 14.25, which means the average was 30. And then the first standard deviation to the left was 16 years of age, because there is 14 years of standard deviation. And the positive standard deviation makes it 44. So a lot of people fell in the bucket of between 16 and 44. The minimum age was 0.17. Infant, very small child. That's really sad. The 25th percentile is 21. 50th percentile is 28. 75th percentile, 39. And the oldest person was 71. All right, in this video, we read the Titanic data. Step 1, we looked at the head of the data. Then we looked at the shape of the data. So what is the data frame size? How big is this table? Then we looked at the data info, which tells us how many valid values are in the data, what is their type, and so forth. And also we described the data, not all of it, only the numerical parts. And we looked at the mean, we looked at the standard deviation, and so forth. But I'll scroll up quickly to the top and come back to this data head. Well, what if I wanted to see more than 5 rows? That's pretty easy. By default, head gives you top 5. But if you want to see more, just type the number of the rows that you want to see. If you type 10, you will see 10. If you type 100, you will not see more than 100 because Pandas by default does not allow more than 100. what do you need to do? You just need to add a line and go to the set options and use max rows and set it to none. Sorry, it should be set option. Yep, that's correct. And now if I do this, I can see 100 rows. So did you see what I did? I just added a line that tells Pandas, please do not stop me from printing 100 lines because I want to see more. And now you can see 100 lines of people. So if you just wanted to see 2 people, 2 rows, you can get 2. However, what if I wanted to see from the bottom of the table? I don't want to see the top. I just want to see from the bottom. So don't use head. Let me get rid of 2. Don't use head, just use tail. Now you will see the data from the bottom of the table. Look at the index. That's 1,312. Looking at the data from the bottom. Can I see the bottom 10 rows? Of course you can. Just add the number. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.